A live broadcast. I'm sure you're sick of hearing it for Election Day, the midterms 2014. This is a live broadcast. It is the 4th day of November 2014. I'm Doug Hagmann in studio with me, my son, fellow investigator co-host Joe Hagmann. We are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Just so glad to be with you.
Here with some breaking election midterm reports. No, I was teasing my dad today, saying every 2 minutes I was going to jump in with a breaking election news report.
That's right.
But
with 0.75% of the precinct reporting, it is.
Yeah, we can now call the election with 0.01%.
Y'all tired
America lost today. America lost in the elections today. I don't care who won or lost. America lost in the long run.
Absolutely. And before we get started, let me just say this, folks. Portions of tonight's broadcast are sponsored by NatureBox, and of course you know that NatureBox ships great tasting wholesome snacks right to your door. You don't even have to get out of your pajamas. Well, it depends, the UPS guy. I don't know. But I'll tell you what, you can forget the vending machine and start snacking smarter with wholesome, delicious treats. And there are many, many treats to choose from. Folks, support this broadcast by ordering a free NatureBox trial box at naturebox.com/CFPradio. That's right. Free NatureBox snacks are found at naturebox.com/CFPradio. Or just go to hagmanandhagmann.com and click on the link to NatureBox. And, of course, folks, our home base on the internet is hagmanandhagmann.com. There are some things that we want to do. In case you haven't noticed there, we took out the three large icons, brought some print up to the top, and then we're going to do some remodeling there. We've got so much to report on that it gets, you've only got so much time in a day. We only have so much time in a day. And when you're looking at the news, what's important is the latest public spat between the Kardashians and the Jenners, or who, I don't know. I'm just making that up. But is that important, or are the false jobless numbers, or are they important? Well, in context, I would say the latter is, but we've got to budget our time, and we've got to focus. Right now, more than ever before in our lives, I believe we've got to focus on what's important. Of course, first, spiritual preparations, get right with God, and then, of course, the practical preparations and the family and the team. And our guest yesterday had said a lot, Jim Wesley Rawls had said a lot with respect to priorities. And folks, if you haven't had a chance to listen to that broadcast yet, he had a lot of good ideas. He was our guest during the middle 2 hours of the show, and gave forth a lot of good information. But in the meantime, here, first of all, Joe, it's great to see you in the studio. I was in and out with. You just can't believe how busy we are. Folks, don't forget about the 14th and 15th of November. If you haven't made reservations or registered yet for the conference in Columbus, Ohio, we are humbled by the request to be presenters there, or to broadcast live from there. Well, let me be a little bit more accurate, to broadcast live from there and to participate or to handle a panel discussion, two of them actually, on Saturday, I believe it is, one in the late morning, early afternoon, and the other in the later afternoon. So we're looking so forward to meeting each and every one of you who will be there. That's the 14th and 15th of November in Columbus, Ohio. It should be fun to watch us broadcast from there. I haven't quite figured out if I'm going to wear my onesies, with the flap in the back, or, exactly how we're going to pull this broadcast off. We've got enough. We might need some roadies. I mean, what do you think? With all the equipment that we've got.
It's funny because we have the ability to do this in a way with very minimal equipment, or we don't. We just aren't sure yet. and the uncertainty of understanding what equipment will already be there versus what we have and what we need. We might show up with a truck full of equipment and only need to use a few pieces of it, or we might show up with the whole truck full and need the whole truck full. We don't know.
We might hijack the Aerosmith truck, that follows the bus, or I don't even know if they're playing or if they're a band still, but some big band. We might hijack the audio equipment. We're not sure, and that you talk about
the biggest issue.
Wow,
is how to broadcast the show as we do now, only simultaneously broadcast it to a live audience to where callers come through and audio that is being heard on the show also comes through to the audience
without
in a way
delay.
that isn't right, without a delay, and in a way that is clear, and it's not like putting a microphone up to a speaker to try to get the sound. They're doing it in a way that is professional on both ends, both live and on the radio. And it's I think we're just going to have to prepare for the best and leave it in the Lord's hands and do what we can.
Well, we bought a bunch of...
And don't forget, the people are attending the conference, bought tickets to be there, they're paying to be there, and we can make them sit there until we're scheduled to go from 7:30 to 9:30, I think, but if we don't get going until 9:30, we'll bring them a snack and we'll make them stay. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, no, and boy, wouldn't that be something? Of course not. We expect this to go off without any flaw or without any problems. We really do. It's just we're just very sensitive to the fact, and I'm the old kind of. I'm a person who. Man, I don't like to make people wait. If somebody says, "Look, the broadcast will start," and of course we're not slaves, but we're adherent to a broadcast clock. By the way, on Friday, I did notice that we will begin our show a half hour earlier than usual on the 15th, I think, or 14th.
In the conference. You know what? That's a good catch. You're right. We are scheduled to go from 7:30 to 8:30 to 9:30. Right. It's just one block, only they separated it by the hour. So we will be on from 7:30 till 9:30.
Right.
So we'll be starting a half hour early and ending an hour and a half early. It'll be a 2-hour show on the Friday evening.
Right, and we also have the option, and wonderful option as well. Thank God for Sheila Zielinski, the weekend vigilante too. I know that she's tied up that weekend, but she might be able to act as an assistant, in terms of assisting us in getting the kinks worked out, and even perhaps finishing the show if necessary. Again, this is all still in the working out stages, but it's going to be fun. And next Thursday, we're going to have on with us just a great number, a few guests. Doug Woodward will be coming back on.
You're talking about when? Next Thursday. Next Thursday. Okay.
Yeah,
next Thursday is the 13th.
Okay, wait a minute. I'm sorry. Wednesday the 12th.
You're talking about tomorrow.
No, I'm talking about Wednesday the 12th. Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay. I thought, because you did have originally scheduled for Wednesday tomorrow, and I haven't heard anything since.
Wait, Wednesday's today. Today's Wednesday. Who's on first?
Today's Tuesday.
No, it's
Stan.
Wait a minute. Today is okay. Oh, for crying out loud!
So who was the one that got the shots at the vet today?
I know.
Was it you? No. Today's Tuesday the 4th with Stan. Just a note from last week. You had mentioned the 5th, which would be tomorrow, Wednesday, the part 2 from Doug Woodward and them coming on Friday. So if it got taken to the next week, that's the 12th, Wednesday, November 12th.
Correct, unless I'm missing something. Okay, so forget everything I just said about the days of the week. Okay, instead of turning back my clock on Saturday, I turned back the calendar. But no, Wednesday the 12th, we're going to have Doug Woodward on. We're going to have, let's see here. I'm looking here. Okay, Mr. Krieger and Mr. McGriff. and possibly John Price. I'm not sure. Authors, tremendous authors.
We haven't had John Price on in a while. He was a guest a few times on the show.
Right.
It'd be good to hear from him.
And I just got to notice from those the people putting the conference together, listening live. I want to say hello to my brethren, but only a few tickets are still available. So if you haven't already registered for this broadcast, by the way, you can get money off by using the coupon code at hagmanandhagmann.com. It's great. So did we register? Yeah, I think we did. Boy, I hope so. All right, that'd be embarrassing. But yes, we do register, folks. And if not, we can always check up at the Motel 6, and it's all good. It's all good. Nights in, we do that all the time. Have done that all the time. Or you back right up to your motel room door, and it's convenient, I think. Anyway.
Yeah. I know you got some stuff you want to get into. Obviously, there is election news, which we're avoiding at all costs for the most part. But we do have some important information that has fallen between the cracks, as one would expect. Here we have a election eve dump. Eric Holder releases Fast and Furious documents that got him cited for contempt of court. 64,000 plus documents have been released on a day where it would be assured that this would be the most, the least paid attention to story. They couldn't have picked a better day to release this.
Oh, sure. And we were looking for the 64,000 to, I think, 280 some documents. It doesn't appear that they've actually scanned them or put them online yet. As soon as they do, we will be going through them with a fine-tooth comb. That's Fast and Furious documents from the Holder office of Eric Holder, the Columbia terrorist, the 1960s Columbia terrorist. That Holder, Fast and Furious. Looking forward to that. Good pickup, Joe. Is there anything else you want to get into? Because I just want a few minutes of your time to kind of set the stage here for the program tonight. But anything else?
Go for it.
Okay. Well, the elections, and I'll just come right out and say this. You were right when you said, Joe, the loser of tonight's elections, the American people. Because it doesn't matter who gets elected, at least not in the larger sense. And if you had any exposure to the normal talk shows of today, that's all you heard was election coverage. It has been reduced to, at least in my view, that of a sports game. Whether it's football or baseball, the scores are always changing. The favorites are talked about. The players are discussed, and it really is nothing more than a sports type venue that at least you're increasingly made to feel that you're a part of. What about the larger picture? Which I like to look at the larger picture. What about America? What about us? What about the middle class? What about the people who will be affected by whatever changes or no changes are made? Now, here's what I do predict. I do predict that there will be certain contested races, and this is relevant to the bigger picture. I believe that there will be certain races that will be contested or too close to call, or something will cause a delay in the actual verifying or confirming the votes. Now, it might not be a large number, maybe 3 to 5% of the races, but I think some integral races there will be a delay of a week to a month to even into next year, perhaps. Yes, even into January. We hope that is not the case, but we do believe, based on the intelligence from sources that we have, that this will be the case, and there will be challenges made by different politicians about the results. We've already seen, and Joe has done a very great job talking about the black box voting system, about the changing, for example, of the Diebold machines or the
yeah. There's several reports, several YouTube videos out of several voting stations in many different states that have shown clips of voters going to click on their electronic voting machine for a Republican. It's always the same way. It's always picking a Republican candidate, and the selection goes to the Democratic politician. I haven't seen one video where the machine accidentally puts a Democratic candidate vote under the Republican vote. But there was a lot of that going on. They were citing calibration errors, as they have been for the since the beginning of electronic voting machines. But yeah, there are a few suspicious things going on out there. Now, I say it doesn't matter in the long run. We know these voting machines are outsourced to a company in Spain. I don't know if it's the same rules that applied to the 2012 presidential election, but the votes weren't even counted in the United States. And it's not who votes that controls who gets in. It's who counts the votes and reports the results of those counts. So are we even getting fair elections? We don't even know that much. And we'd have to lean toward no when looking even at the last presidential election, seeing 100% of some municipalities voting, 100% of the dead voting in other municipalities. It's definitely not a fair election.
Exactly. And this is one of the issues, folks, about the elections that just keep in the back of your mind, because what we are being set up for, and we are being set up. I have no doubt in my mind that we are being set up for a takedown like we've never seen before. This country has never seen. And my wife said something to me that was very interesting, and she said it a couple of times in different contexts. But she said, this country's been through a lot, and we've always recovered. But and I had responded to her, yes, we have. But just because we've recovered doesn't mean that one of these blows, one of these shots could be the fatal shot that could take us down. Just because it never happened before doesn't mean that it won't happen in the future. And that's part of people's normalcy bias. And of course, my wife understands that. I mean, she fully understands that. So, not to talk poorly about my wife, because she understands the larger picture. But she did point out that most people hold that opinion that there's really nothing that could take this country down. Before I get into this, I just want to give you a couple of quotes of the day, perhaps. One from Thomas Jefferson, and these relate to what we'll be talking about tonight. Educate and inform everyone. They are the only sure reliance for the preservation of our liberty. That's Thomas Jefferson. So I look at that as an instruction, and so does Joe. Educate and inform everyone, because everyone, well, you're the only source of sure reliance for the preservation of our liberty. That doesn't apply to everyone. That certainly applies to those of you listening to this program. George Bernard Shaw: the reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable man persists in trying to adapt himself. Let me start that over again. And now George Bernard Shaw. We're talking nothing about spiritual here. We're talking about the world, the events of the world. The reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The circumstances that are going around him. The unreasonable man persists in trying to adapt the world to himself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man. And if you think about it, isn't that what the worldly are attempting to do? Those who are immersed in the world are attempting to do. And of course, we know that our fate and the importance of things, it's not a worldly existence, but we still have to occupy. And this, the last quote, this is, I received an email today from somebody I really never heard of, and The closer we get, folks, and the closer we as a couple of investigators, talk show hosts, whatever, we get to a particular target, the more enemy fire we attract. Isn't that always the case? I mean, you could parlay that into your own personal existence. The closer you get to the truth of a matter, the more people resist or will assail you. It's an amazing thing. William Buckley said, in response to a critic, in response to somebody just like I described, I would like to take you seriously, but that would be an affront, or that would be to affront your intelligence. Think about that. Interesting. Okay. Now, as we look at the bigger picture here, I do see that following tonight, after tonight, we are going to be in a new chapter, completely a new chapter in American history, because what is going to happen, and most people will call Obama, if the balance of power switches on both houses, both parts of Congress too, the Republicans, certainly not conservatives, but Republicans, at least in name or in designation, I do believe that Barack Hussein Obama, Barry Soetoro, will exercise the scorched earth policy he's had in his back pocket since day one. And when I say that, I'm talking about to take this country down.
I have a minute and a half clip from the White House press secretary on what you were talking about. Obama will continue to aggressively use his executive authority regardless of election results. Here it is.
Optimism that the presidents and vice presidents about control of the Senate is warranted or not. The fact is that whichever way it goes, the gridlock which exists today is likely to persist. So can you tell us what this administration really hopes to accomplish in the last 2 years?
Well, Bill, as I pointed out earlier, I would anticipate that we'll have more extensive conversations about this topic after the election results are in. But as a general matter, I think that the president has been clear about a few things. The first is that he is bound and determined to do everything that he can using his power in the executive branch to make progress on behalf of middle-class families in this country. And the president, regardless of the outcome of the election, will continue to act aggressively to use his executive authority to help middle-class families.
What specific?
Well, the best example of something like this would be on immigration reform, that Republicans have not demonstrated at this point any willingness to consider the bipartisan proposal that passed through the Senate. So the president has indicated that before the end of the year, he's prepared to use his executive authority to try to fix those elements of the immigration system that he can fix using his executive authority. So.
That's it, executive authority. The executive branch, that is the occupied branch at the moment, occupied by the constitutionally ineligible Barry Soetoro, is in fact intends to pull out the stops and use all the power of the pen, the power of tyranny of a dictator to accomplish the objectives. And don't expect a fight from the Republicans or the right, the opposite of the Marxist, progressives, liberals. Do not expect a fight there, because they're all on the same side, ultimately. Now, you might think, well, wait a minute, that's not a true statement. They're not all on the same side. They're all compromised to a large extent. So does it really matter, as Joe said, does it really matter how the balance of power switched? It's all a controlled demolition when you come right down to it. We've got to understand how things operate, at least in the larger sense. We have a lot of guests on. We have Paul McGuire. We have Steve Quayle. We've got, Nathan Liel. And we have been told through symbology, through the Illuminati. What to expect? We've been warned. Doc Marquis, other people have said, look, it's all right there for your understanding. The 2012 Olympics in London, a lot of symbology. The 2014 Grammys, symbology. The 2013, 2014 Super Bowl, halftime shows, symbology, a lot of commercial entertainment. Please note that what is considered news is essentially entertainment, and what was considered entertainment is now really a system of communication. More news than entertainment, more symbology to communicate with the unwashed masses, and messages to convey to the unwashed masses, meaning you and I. But as Paul McGuire has stated, and others have stated, most people today look at America's and the world's problems using just merely a three-dimensional perception. This perception, well, you might know it as scientific materialism, is the belief that the only reality there is one that we can see with our own eyes. Now, it's from there that we get the expression, seeing is believing. Is that scientific materialism? The problem is that this belief system isn't true. It's simply not true. And any attempt to manage what is called reality will simply fail without understanding and accessing what scientists now call the fourth dimension. This comes into play. No one will talk about the multidimensional aspects outside of shows like this and others like this program. You hear, for example, Timothy Alberino talking about portals, and people look at you like, what? Are you serious? Like I would have looked at others 5 years ago, 4 years ago, saying, come on, you're nuts. You're just crazy. You're talking gobbledygook. Well, the key really is understanding the dimensionality of this world today. Now, if we just take a quick inventory of our current problems that we all know that we're facing in America and even around the world that are now at the critical state, and I mean critical state, and today the results of the election will in fact push the actions of those in power in one way or another. Bear in mind that we've got not a lame duck president. I don't even want to call it, not a lame duck renegade in chief. We've got an injured badger, cornered, and painted into a corner, perhaps himself painted into a corner. He himself did that, perhaps. But having said that, do not underestimate what this man and the spirit behind this man can and will do to this country, and hence the world. I believe that he is prepared to not just take down the United States, but in so doing will also take down the powers throughout Europe. And we will be going head-to-head with Russia. Folks, yesterday I talked about the Valdai conference that happened on October 22nd. It began on October 22nd and lasted through the 25th. That was held at Sochi, the Olympics, place for the Olympics. I would urge everyone, don't take my word for this, I would urge everyone to look and to research what was said. Research Vladimir Putin's speech at Sochi, at that Valdai conference. It's their 11th annual conference. It's the equivalent of the Bilderberg meeting or the Trilateral Commission meeting or the CFR here in the States. That's what Russia, that's that meeting. Now, I got a couple of emails after last night. We must also know that the power brokers of the Satanists, the Illuminati, they do not lose or plan to lose. They bankroll, they have interest in both sides of a perceived fight. So as we look at the U.S. versus Russia, you've got to understand, and I think our audience understands that the Illuminati, the actual power brokers, the Committee of 300, the power elite, those in positions of power, have positioned themselves to win regardless. Everything else is an illusion. It's for show. It's for, well, not just show, but consider, for example, if the ruling families have an objective to decrease the world's population by a third, we'll say, or maintain it to 500 million people, depending on how you want to categorize it. There's got to be some collusion at the highest of levels. But what better way to do so than to launch a pandemic or to create a third world war, to collapse an economy, which of course would cause starvation? All of these things are in play right now, and isn't it interesting that the major problems we are facing in America and around the world are now at that critical stage, at that critical point in history? We'll just take them one at a time briefly. One is the possibility, of course, of a global financial collapse. We've talked about this. With that come riots and anarchy and some form of totalitarianism to manage the chaos. Don't forget, it's order out of chaos. It's not just chaos. Chaos is not a destination. Chaos is a journey. Chaos is a process. Now, in addition, we've got an enormous increase in weather-related phenomena. Stan Deyo, I'm sure, will talk about this, such as hurricanes and tsunamis and earthquakes and solar flares and man-made food shortages and plagues, and an already dangerous level of social chaos. Many folks, not just in America but around the world, are very concerned about a far lower standard of living, as well they should be, and the loss of our freedoms, including religious freedom. Now, the question is, how do we effectively deal with this whole mess, with all of these problems? Currently, we have an extremely large percentage of non-effective ways to deal with them. The voting box, for example, electing the same people over and over and over again. How's that working out? If you go back to 2012, for example, the last presidential election between Obama and Mitt Romney, let's look at that for historical and learning purposes. Romney and the Republicans spent a lot of money, but they were ineffectively campaigning. They ran an ineffective campaign. Collectively, the so-called conservative movement, now with some notable exceptions, is for all practical purposes realistically dead. It's an ineffective movement. Is it not? The primary strategies are almost entirely built on a social paradigm from the Reagan era. Don't we hear that often? The reason conservatives really put Reagan on a pedestal, look, folks, I like the guy, is because they are really frozen in time. They've not allowed their perception, their awareness to develop effective strategies to communicate with America as it is now. As it is now. Not as they remember it to be and want it to be. Remember, perception oftentimes is reality, at least to some people. The Republicans in particular, whether they're in positions of leadership or not, are out of touch and disconnected, and their consciousness is absolutely frozen. In contrast, no matter what you might consider Obama to be, and those people around him, like Valerie Jarrett and David Axelrod and all of the other revolutionary renegades, lawless ones, they can and are effectively communicating. And back during the 2012 election, didn't they use social media networking to their advantage? Obviously they did. Well, why did I bring that up? Because neurological scientists have created enormous breakthroughs in discovering how the human mind works. You can just ask Paul McGuire this. Paul covers this in his book, Standing Down Goliath. He covers it very well. But the neurosciences and neurological scientists, they've done immense research and have enormous breakthroughs in discovering how our mind works, the human mind works. And in just the last 5 to 10 years only, look at the discovery regarding neuroplasticity. Have you ever heard that term, neuroplasticity? It allows the brain to continually reorganize itself and empowers neurons to adjust their activities to a new environment. Neurons or nerve cells carry information, thoughts, memories, all of that, the perception, through the brain, and it allows us to think. Now, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Paul McGuire spoke about neuroplasticity. It's vital to letting the brain form neural pathways to ponder, in order to really understand and process the information. Now, if we allow, and this is what's taking place, if we allow our minds to be programmed through social engineering, whether it's television or the internet or computers or whatever, or mind control, or even due to our own failures, if we allow our minds to be programmed to take the willful action, to think new thoughts in response to new situations, the neural pathways cannot allow our minds to receive new information in a dynamic world. Really what I'm saying, our minds fall back on an earlier or previous, more familiar type of programming. Our brains become frozen and we cease to be effective in all that we do. Folks, this is exactly what is taking place with the science of neurolinguistic and neuroplasticity, this neurological programming. We are being affected by it. And you can, Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, on the right, those on the left. I can't think of all the big players on either side, but this is what they either knowingly or unknowingly are engaging in. Think back to 2012. The Romney campaign and the Republican Party are illustrative of this principle. Romney was communicating a Leave It to Beaver message, and Paul McGuire spoke about this, and in fact has written about this. That message he conveyed to the world back in 2012, all is fine. Meanwhile, Obama was communicating effectively to the members of 2012, to the current day. It's interesting, the Republican National Convention, it was televised. If you looked out over the crowd, and this is not wrong to make this observation, all you saw was a sea of white faces. As the late communications theorist Marshall McLuhan said, medium is the message. Now, you can fight that all you want, folks. You can say, nah. But it's the way things are, so you've got to deal with it. The American voter, and we see this today, is primarily swayed by image, by perception, even down to facial expressions and clever sound bites. Oh, and how clever sound bites are being used to convey and to program us today. Just think, for example, and I'm not going to go too far down this road, but think of Clint Eastwood, the dirty, hairy image. Think of what that image conveys, the ultimate conveyance of that image. Tragically, and I'll cite Paul McGuire on this, tragically, and I've talked to Paul McGuire personally about this, and he's also written about this, I believe, in his book, Standing Down Goliath. The Republican Party, especially today, and even many conservatives, exemplify that image, or at least the perception of that image to people, and that makes them appear to be totally out of touch. Now, on a neurological level, their brains don't have enough neuroplasticity, and new neurological pathways are not being built. So in short, they're people, the receivers of this image, this perception, they're stuck in this time period, but they're stuck in the time period in which they are familiar with. However, they're not living for today. This neurological process is at work in many conservative radio talk show hosts. We see it today. They don't realize, well, they do realize that their message is stale and repetitive. Without realizing it, they have become cliches of themselves. Have they not? And by the way, if they're not cautious, they will lose their ability to educate and motivate their listeners and the masses. Now, ours is not to motivate necessarily, but certainly inform and educate, or at least assist in that process. This neuro-linguistic and neurological programming in which we find ourselves being subjected to, folks, is being fought in different dimensions. It's really the fourth dimension. We have to understand where the fight is. We're very concerned about the state of this country. There's a sobering reality that unless things change, America's going to go down, and it will go down with a thundering calamity thud. You know, those of you listening to this program, you understand what we're talking about. But your friends perhaps don't. They're walking around clueless, like zombies, like shell-shocked people. The primary battlefield is the battlefield of the mind. I guess that's the point. The primary battlefield is the battlefield of the mind, and we would not be facing the challenges, the problems, the issues we are facing today had we not already lost that battle. Think about this, folks. The Fabian socialists. Remember when Glenn Beck did his thing about Fabian socialists? The Fabian socialists, like, for example, H.G. Wells and Bertrand Russell and Paul McGuire talks about Aldous Huxley and the KGB, the CIA, and the scientists like B.F. Skinner. They understand this. They get it. Look, folks, other groups of people who are dancing in a collective trance state with their neurological pathways psychosurgically amputated are the majority of evangelical Christians. Do you believe that? Absolutely. You would think that with all of the biblical teaching that's available out there, that we do, that's out there, you would think that with all that's available on the renewing of the mind of Christ, and the verse, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind," that they would think clearly and act courageously. But are we? No. Not at all. The larger percentage of evangelical Christians don't have a sound mind, because that would imply that they were actually thinking, that we are all thinking, but only few of us are in reality. The reality is that they practically have no mind at all, and therefore have become useless in the greatest spiritual battle of all time, meaning that this battle in which we are now enmeshed is a spiritual one taking place in another dimension. And, of course, the satanic forces know this, and they are pulling out all the stops and using this type of neurological programming on us in ways that we are either being facilitators of that, or we are saying no and attempting to educate listeners to what's really going on. And just in closing here, we have to ask ourselves, how do we get to this point? Well, the evangelical Christians began to embrace this, the same theology that destroyed the church in Nazi Germany and caused the evangelical Christians to vote for Hitler. And vote for Hitler they did. Think about this, folks. The evangelical Christian, the bulk, 98% voted for Hitler. And this happened because they allowed their minds first to be conquered by the philosophy of the German schools of theological higher criticism, which taught that the Bible wasn't written by God, and that there was no resurrection, no miracles, and Jesus Christ did not rise from the dead. In addition, they were taught that there is no heaven, nor is there any hell. And what is taking place right now with the homosexual marriages, with the lack of morality, with the Pope, with the priests and bishops and the clergy all across the country, as well as the conservatives who are facilitating this heresy. They're doing the same thing. In closing, I'll just say the German evangelical church had been dumbed down and lacked any spiritual discernment. So they viewed Hitler as kind of a messiah. Why? Well, because he told them what they wanted to hear, and he promised them peace, prosperity, and universal health care. What in the world are we looking at today? What's the backbone? What's the foundation of voting progressive, Marxist, liberal, or shall I say democratic in this election today? It's just that. You see, the dumbing down process was not and is not accidental. It's very highly strategic in the scientific social engineering. Hitler was the secret, Hitler and, I should say, the secret occult societies that put him in power. Consider, folks, the real society, the Thule society, merged the demonic teachings of the occult with the science of mind control and won the battlefield of the mind. And that is exactly, folks, exactly what we're seeing today. If you read about this kind of neurological programming, you will find Paul McGuire perhaps is the most, he's at the tip of the spear in talking about this. It's interesting because the first strike in the battlefield of the mind is to convince your enemy that they have become powerless. They're powerless against you, and there's no possible way for them to win except to surrender. This is the focal point of psychological warfare, just like in Hitler's time. There are highly advanced scientific and technological weapons of warfare being employed today, right now. But to the person like your neighbor, like your Uncle Fred, or your Aunt Jenny who's brainwashed, this thought is just promoted, or this thought, I should say, which is really advanced by the media, politicians, talk show hosts, journalists. Yeah. It's promoted by the media, the politicians, other leaders. It's a core component of the brainwashing process, folks. It shuts down the neurological pathways by erecting a terrifying psychological monster that says to you that if you think independently, you're crazy. And you're going to be rejected by your peers, and people fear rejection. I would urge everyone to study the impact the Nazis had as it relates to what's taking place today, the neurological games, the experiments, the torturous experiments that have taken place. And I would urge everyone to understand that this battle that we're fighting right now, the battle for America, the battle for the world, is not just simply happening in a three-dimensional world. It's happening in multidimensionalism. There are multidimensional areas, a fourth dimension. That's why when Steve Quayle comes on and says there are no political solutions to spiritual problems, he means that, and I don't pretend to put words in his mouth, but he talks about the spiritual realm. And you see, we're being told that doesn't matter. And the affront by the Marxists right now in power, there's a battle being waged to erase all sense of morality out of this country. When Joe talks about the abortions, when you can have an abortion, or when people legitimize abortions up to a toddler that's, 4 years old, Joe? I don't know. I mean, when you get to that level, isn't all hope lost? At least all semblance of reasonableness and morality gone? Spirituality gone? Physicists who understand the fourth dimension tell us that it's possible to transfer energy with limited cost and effort from the fourth dimension into three dimensions. This also goes for thought, for example, and this also is conducive to this programming I'm talking about. Look, folks, the enemy understands at the highest of levels. At the highest of levels, they understand the multidimensionality of the battle in which we find ourselves. Unfortunately, those around us, even the pastors that we look up to, the ministers that we talk with, they have no clue. We got to get a clue. We've got to understand the magnitude of the fight. I didn't plan on getting into that deep, but I just wanted to mention that Joe said it very clearly. It doesn't matter who wins today. We know who loses, and it's us, because what's going to take place after today, I just basically laid the groundwork why, and went back in history and explained the more nuts and bolts of it, but Joe said it best. It doesn't matter, because we are the ones that are going to lose. You see, what's going to happen is a week, 10 days, 2 weeks, I don't know, 2 days. The grand jury is going to come out and render a decision in Ferguson. You're going to have additional documentation about the lawlessness, about Fast and Furious, and about Benghazi. You're going to have additional figures about the third quarter of this past year, and even more so the projections for the fourth quarter of this year. Bottom line here, buckle up. Make sure your seat backs and tray tables are in their full upright and locked position, because really from this point on, we'll be
announcement.
Short.
Midterm election announcement. You just received the alert on your phone. We have a new governor in Pennsylvania. Yay.
Thomas Wolfe, the gun grabber.
Yeah, good luck with that in Pennsylvania there, Mr. Wolfe. But no, I don't know. Me and my father both signed up for this Go Erie is a local, I believe it's Go Erie. You can get text updates. They do weather, traffic, any type of important news locally here. They send you texts on your phone, and I just got the message, and I saw that I heard my dad's phone over there get the message too, and they just released this breaking news: Democrat Tom Wolfe defeats PA Governor Tom Corbett, AP projects. Not that I care, but just wanted to let you guys know who are out there who do care. And
the goal, but see, Joe, the goal is the destruction of the United States, and even on the state level. Look, the saying, "All politics is local." I mean, that is true, but really, what purpose does it serve to provide election night coverage wall to wall when in fact you're participating in a fraud?
Yeah.
You like that little noise? I've got no clue what that is. Folks, I don't even know what. Seriously, I'm so technologically illiterate. I don't. When he says the phone's on the desk, I have to actually dust it off because I don't use it. My wife had. I'm like a little kid, like instead of writing my name on my underwear, when I go somewhere, she'll say, okay, now you take this with you, and here's what you do. You press this button or that button, and yeah, I never end up pressing the right buttons anyway, so at least if it dings or rings or does make some noise, at least I know I've got to call the office. So anyway.
And we have Stan coming on here in a few minutes. We're going to go to a break in a few minutes, but some of the headlines we're going to cover with Stan, possibly maybe after he's off the air, and we're going to take your calls too in the third hour. We have our Solicitor General saying Israel has no claim to Jerusalem, just as Russia has no claim to Crimea. That, and there's much more to that story that we need to get into. Also, the Air Force has fired 2 more nuclear missile corps commanders and has disciplined another, as there is a crisis of leadership as we continue to see people removed who are in charge of high military, Air Force, Army, Marine, nuclear capable, any from submarines to missile systems and defense systems. The leadership is being gutted from the military by the Obama administration. And many different excuses are given as to why these people are quote unquote thrown out or their bad behavior is got them removed from jobs. Also, this headline found very interesting. ISIS and other jihadist terrorists post 90 tweets a minute to spread propaganda. I don't have time on this side of the break to really get into my feelings on that. And this story just makes your heart cringe. 90-year-old among the first charged under Fort Lauderdale's new strict rules against feeding the homeless. Yes, you heard me right. A 90-year-old man, a 90-year-old homeless advocate, was charged for violating a new city law, along with 2 other local pastors, in the new ordinance that bans giving out food to the public. He faces 60 days in jail and a $500 fine. And we're talking about 2 pastors and a 90-year-old man jailed on criminal charges for feeding the homeless. That and many other stories on the other side. But first, we're going to go to this top-of-the-hour break right now. When we come back, we will be joined by Stan Deyo, as we are on every Tuesday, or Tuesdays with Stan in the second hour. Got some questions for Stan. We had a meteor streak across the eastern United States yesterday that had a lot of people talking, and almost half of 500-plus reports around the country of people seeing this meteor. And we have some earthquake news, volcano news to get into, and other earth changes and stories we will hit on the other side with Stan. You're listening, ladies and gentlemen, to hour number 2 of this Tuesday edition of the Hagmann Hagmann Report. As of every Tuesday in our second hour, we are joined by Mr. Stan Deyo, his website, standeyo.com. Stan, it's great to have you back on the show. How are you doing?
Oh, good. Been watching this exciting election results here.
Any updates that you have?
Well, the Republicans have gained 3 of the seats that they need out of the 6 to get control of the Senate. And the polls have just closed here in Mountain Standard Time 5 minutes ago, so we're going to wait and see if we pick up another couple seats here. The Senate seat here in Colorado may not go as well as we wanted, but still, I guess that gives it away. I am a Republican in this particular election. So anyway, we wait and see. It could have been a lot worse. So far, Republicans have 43 seats, Democrats 41 confirmed, and Republicans need 51 to control the Senate, and that's another 8, with 3 being overturned of Democrat incumbents. And so that's the political update. There are other things to talk about this evening, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch to get into tonight. And I was just checking out your show images page, and I checked on the that sunspot that we just had, that huge sunspot that last week disappeared to the other dark side of the sun, and I see it's coming back around now. Supposed to be coming back around here very shortly, and people have their ears and eyes perked up for that. Also, we had an event last night where there was a meteor strike, or not strike, meteor streaks being reported, fireballs being reported all over the eastern United States yesterday. Not sure the origins of that, if that was some kind of special event, if that was something that was... I know we're not in the middle of a meteor storm or shower, so that was kind of out of the ordinary.
Did you see that page where they showed the place that keeps a track of all the reports of people that saw the meteor, and they have lines drawn showing? Boy, that looked like a spiny echidna or something, didn't it? It was really packed in there.
I mean, it shows, like you said, like on Google Maps, when you go to the Street View, how you can take the little person icon and put it on the Street View. Well, it shows that, and then it shows a line. From what I'm guessing, each line shows the direction the people were looking at and where they saw them. And it looks like something exploded over the Middle Eastern half of the United States, and fireballs projected all in every direction from there. At least that's what the map indicates to me.
Yeah, it was something like that to me too. The excuse me, one of the things that I wanted to discuss here is something that I discovered this morning, or I think I discovered it when I deduced it from the prophecies and from that sunspot or that sun flare you're talking about. On the show images page, of course, I've got up there right in the middle a big picture, current picture as of a few hours ago of a massive flare shooting off of the sun up at about direction of about 10:30 or 11 o'clock as you're looking at it. And there's a movie underneath it. If you go, you can see 4 days of this activity on the sun. And it is very, very, very busy with flares on the backside of the sun. And certainly we saw that one last week that was just leaving us. And we talked about it in the show. It's now around the backside, about middle ways. And because the sun doesn't rotate every 28 days, roughly. So, that was 7 days ago, so it's 7. So about another 7 days, we'll see that particular sunspot, 2192, I think it is, coming back around with 2195 as well on the backside. And some new ones, it looks like. These things are doing what I expected would happen, and that is the sun is exhibiting horrific magnetic vortices and instabilities, which can produce sunspots, but they can also produce flares and coronal mass ejections if these filaments all add up together to make a large magnetic filament that whips around like a rope and throws stuff off. Now, we have about 7 days, roughly 7 days before things start to heat up on the Earth here, figuratively speaking, because we will have this part of the sun that just erupted a few hours ago this afternoon, and it's the picture you see on the website there. That area of the sun will be around facing us. And it reminded me to look up a number of things in the Bible and prophecy, and mainly in the book of the Revelation of John. Because if we do get a huge amount of infrared energy and ultraviolet shot out at the Earth from one of these supermassive flares and following coronal mass ejection, it is possible that the heat wave it would produce would burn the surface of the Earth that is facing the sun at that moment. Now, you're going to have to visualize this. I didn't have time to do an animation of this, but if you're standing out in space looking at the Earth in front of you, and let's say the sun is over to your right shining on the Earth, so half of the planet is being lit by the sun. But if you look at the edge where the light becomes dark, the shadow part of the Earth, it's a soft edge. It's called the terminator. And the terminator is soft because some of the light rays are hitting glancing blows because they're hitting close to the edge of the disk of the Earth, and so they don't light up as much. They go on out into space. The portion of the Earth that's facing the sun that gets enough direct radiation from the sun to be affected is about, instead of a half of the planet, about a third or slightly more, depending on what time of the year the season is. Now, this means that if the sun were to blast off something that took maybe an hour to fully impact the Earth and cook things, that it would hit that side of the planet facing it, but not the other side. This would be a sudden thing, a sudden impact, relatively speaking, in taking place in about an hour. Now, if you remember, in the Revelation of John, in 8:7, chapter 8, verse 7, the first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood, and they were cast upon the earth. In other words, from off the earth they came, and a third part of the trees was burnt up, and all the green grass was burnt up. Now, green grass is perhaps a little less strong, if you wish, than trees and branches, that are thicker and tougher. But the green grass, it says all green grass, and I assume that means on the whole earth, but only a third part of the trees were burnt up. The second angel sounds in Revelation 8:8, and it says, as it were, like a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea, and the third part of the sea became blood. Now, in those days, a burning mountain was a volcano. Now, there's certainly one that is close to doing that down North Island of New Zealand, the Lake Taupo Caldera. And, in fact, it used to be called an inland sea. Now, it says a third part of the creatures in Revelation 8:9, which were in the sea and had life, died, and the third part of the ships were destroyed. Now, I don't think that means that, okay, every third ship, you're gone. I think it was that portion of the earth and the sea that had ships on it that were facing the event when it happened from the sun were destroyed. Now, there are other things that happened, of course, in Revelation 8. The fourth angel sounds in 8:12, and a third part of the sun was smitten, and the third part of the moon, and the third part of the stars. So the third part of them was darkened, and the day shone not for a third part of it, and the night likewise. So this is saying to me that something happens to the sun primarily because its light's what makes the light of the moon. But for a third part of the stars to disappear means that for some reason what comes off the sun, or it's a cloud, as Isaiah spoke of, a cloud forms around the sun, a dark cloud. That cloud spreads out and obscures a third of the heavens at night when we're looking up into the sky. Now, I don't know if it's because that smoke cloud reaches out and surrounds the earth or partially surrounds it or what, but it does say a third part of the stars would not be visible, it'd be darkened. Okay, now, going to Revelation 14:8, another angel said, Babylon is fallen, that great city which made all the nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. And it goes on, Revelation 18:2. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and has become the habitation of devils and the hold of every foul spirit and the cage of every unclean and hateful bird. These birds are normally to come pick up the dead bodies, the carrion birds. Now, in 1 hour, it says that Babylon is burned. The kings of the earth who committed fornication and lived deliciously with her shall bewail her and lament for her when they shall see the smoke of her burning, standing afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment come. And the merchants there shall weep and mourn over, for no man buyeth their merchandise any more. Now, that could be New York. It could be the United States. Certainly there's been arguments made for the United States and Great Britain being the financial Babylon of this time. Rick Coombs wrote a book on that, America the Babylon, and of course he's passed on now. But He and I talked at length about this over the years, and I do think that America is one of the Babylons, or part of the Babylon system of this age. But what could make America burn in 1 hour? For in 1 hour she is made desolate, it says in Revelation 18:19. Alas, alas, that great city wherein were made rich all that had ships in the sea, by reason of her costliness, for in 1 hour she is made desolate, and the smoke of her burning, of course, rises up to heaven, as I said earlier. I'm setting a scene here for something that we're going to expand on here now. If America is facing the sun when this great event happens, are you there?
Yes, we are.
Okay, sorry, it dropped out over here. Okay, if America is facing the sun when this flare or coronal mass ejection or whatever it is hits the Earth, it will be virtually overheated and burned, and there will be survivors, but you'll need to be in caves or underground or something to deal with it for a while. Now, although I don't call the Hopi prophecies biblical, when they do agree with what is in the Bible, I consider them. Boy, are you still there?
Yeah, what are you hearing, Stan? Because I don't hear anything.
It's like it just goes very quiet. Anyway, now the Hopi say that there's going to be a period of time when the sun gets very bright and they'll have to hide underground in their mud kivas for a few days, a couple of weeks. Now, you can imagine that if a burst of energy so bright, so strong, hits 1/3 of the Earth on one side, that the heat from that won't just go away overnight. It'll take days and weeks for it to dissipate. And the rest of the planet will, of course, experience severe weather and heating from that energy being poured into the Earth's ecosystem. And it will take weeks and not months for that to stabilize. So there will be huge, excuse me, huge storms that will occur, violent lightning storms and things like that. The map that I've got on the show images page, the splash map there, where it shows the sun and the flares coming off of it. To the right of it, there's a picture of the Earth, and it's on a site that you can find. There are a number of them that show what part of the planet is being illuminated, sun, at a given time. You can dial in the time and the date that you want to see. Now, looking at this, we see that the picture I've got there shows Africa, South America, and America all lit up by the sun when I took this picture today. You'll look at the portion where Israel is, which is in at the right edge of the Mediterranean, just up the northeast corner of Africa. It's in shade. So if the sun were to go off at this time, bang, it would hit the United States, South America, and West Africa, and part of Spain and Europe, up into Iceland and that area.
Mediterranean, yeah.
Now God is going to take care of His of Israel. We know that it'll be in prophecy. We know that China will be in prophecy, and the kings of the East, of course, will come in and march at the end of the tribulation period for that great war in the Battle of Armageddon. So we know those will be preserved. And we know the Arab nations that will be there in the Confederation, or the Antichrist, will be preserved. And a part of, Italy, Greece, and up into the western leg of the old Roman Empire will be preserved. Looking at this, we can see that the danger period for Israel, or the safe period, I guess, would be 3 a.m. Universal Time to 3 p.m. the next day. There's a 12-hour safety period there for Israel being in the shade of this event. And in the United States, I figured here at Mountain Standard Time, between 3 p.m. and 9 p.m. on the day that this happens will be when we'll be in the danger zone the most and could be clobbered. And I do think, because America is like Babylon, because China will survive, because Israel will survive, and all that over on that side, that at that moment, when that sun energy hits the planet, that we may very well see the rapture occur. And the Antichrist will say, they were wiped out, those in the rapture, by that sun thing. It wasn't a rapture. The sunburst killed a lot of the Christians. And where are they? The United States, South America, West Africa, and in part of Europe on the western coast. So most of the strong Christian nations would be hit by that intense heat. And, it would be easy for them to lie to the people and explain that we disappeared because we were burned up in that great solar flash. And, of course, the liftoff of all the living Christians and perhaps even the dead, if we see them rise first, if we actually see that event, will be masked by this brilliant burst of light. Nobody will see anything. There won't be a record of it, at least for the common person. This is why, looking at the sun and its terrible, terrible behavior right now, I am concerned. People need to be prepared to endure if a test shot, if you wish, of this solar event, what you might call a bow shot, happens in the next week to 10 days. Because after that, we'll have a period of perhaps relaxing. It might be months, might be several years, like 2 or 3 years before the big event happens that Revelation talks about, or this may be the event starting that Revelation is talking about. We do know that there are things falling into our atmosphere in the last year or two that scientists could not even detect until a day or two or until the moment that they passed us. So we could be surprised by a burning star falling down into the seas and polluting it, and, of course, the sun throwing off energy in a dust cloud and whatever. The behavior of the sun at the moment is exceptional. I've never seen it like this. That's why I put up this video that I took off of the Soho site on the Internet for you to look at, because it is throwing flares off that are impressive. And that's on the back side and on the sides of it and heading our way. And even spaceweather.com said, look out next week. Next 7 days is going to be interesting. Could be a number of M-class and quite certainly X-class flares come out of that. And the X-class are higher energy and the ones that can do a bit of damage. So do you see what I'm saying here is
that video is amazing.
Things to put into the mix.
The time-lapse video of the sun and the amount of ejections coming off the sun, that is pretty intense for, 4 days?
Yes, 4 days. Well, yeah. Today's not finished, but it's about 3 3/4 days is what we've recorded on there.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Stan, would this encompass the entirety of the lower 48 states of America?
Yeah. Now, that's if it hits at that at one point in the middle of that window. The thing could hit while it's slightly off center, but not enough to hit. Like I think Australia and China will be in a safe zone when it hits. So as the world turns, the impact on the United States and South America may be less on one side or the other, but I think in the main that the eastern states, certainly New York City and that area there, will be right in the center of it or close enough to be burned to a crisp.
Yeah.
If that happens. Now, I'm just saying if, because I'm trying to relate current events that we're seeing in the sun with biblical prophecy, and that can be quite dangerous.
Stan, correct me if I'm wrong, but it doesn't look like there's a time right now where America and Israel would simultaneously be covered by the darkness of the moon. Meaning either in America or in Israel, the sun is always shining in one of the two places. It's never simultaneously dark.
That's right. Right. So Israel will be preserved, yeah.
But also, is there a possibility for there to have an event happen, like you described, only happen over maybe more eastern, even with Israel in the middle, that Israel is supernaturally protected by the Lord, as he said he would protect and leave the people of Israel after it's trampled. It would be the last nation, and then it would be judged before the end.
It is possible, but if you factor in the fact that the kings of the East have to be alive and bond together and make the Battle of Armageddon toward the end of the tribulation, then they aren't destroyed yet. They haven't been, preserved, or they haven't been destroyed, so they've been preserved. So whether God preserves Israel because it's the apple of his eye or not, the Chinese, the kings of the East all over in Indonesia, they have to be alive and organized and not, destroyed by some event that wipes out their infrastructures. They can't raise armies. They are going to be there to come into the Megiddo Plain. So that's my counter to that question. Israel and the others around it will be preserved more than the other side of the planet.
Stan, if I can go back to something you said, you kind of gave us a window of time using Mountain Standard Time by my math here, non-Common Core math. We're looking at, like, for example, Eastern Time would be from 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. as a potential window. And obviously we're talking hypotheticals here, and there are a lot of variables. But so we know that, obviously, since daylight savings times kicked in here, it gets darker earlier in the day. So at 7 o'clock at night, I mean, it's dark. Let's just say in New York, if it did, again, forgive me for the potential idiocy of these questions, but let's say I'm in New York City, I'm in Brooklyn, and I'm standing in the street in Brooklyn at 9 o'clock at night, and this goes off. Oh, okay. I'm not sure if that works. All right, let's just say I'm standing in the middle in Brooklyn, New York at 9 o'clock p.m., and such an event does take place that you're talking about. What would I expect to see, if anything, or would I just turn into a piece of charcoal, a charcoal briquette? I mean,
Doug, hold on a second. There is something wrong with Skype. It's blanking you out. I can't hear you sometimes. The event happens, and then what happens? What's your...
okay.
At night,
yeah, I just adjusted some things here on my end. Hopefully that helps. I'm standing in the street of Brooklyn,
Hello?
New York at 9 o'clock at night. Oh, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Stan. Yeah, it seems like you're having a problem. Why don't you...
I can't hear you guys over there at all. I'm going to...
you can't hear me, Stan?
Tell you that here on the internet here. But it's like we've been...
That's odd.
Disconnected.
Yeah, hold on. Let me type
that. I think we've been disconnected, guys.
All right, now, I don't know, Stan, if you can hear me.
Hello. Oh, hi, Joe?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, you're back now.
Yeah, you never cut off from the call, and from what I see in the chat, you never broke off from the chat either. I don't know if there is an issue with Skype or not, but...
well, you know how Skype goes, blip, 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 cuts in, cuts out. That's what happened on my side.
Well, see, my father's, he's using an actual land phone this evening, so I don't know why. It must be Skype chopping up his audio on that end.
Chopping you up?
Yeah, that's weird.
Anyway, I do apologize for sounding like an idiot here, but I don't know when I'm hearing or when I'm speaking, I guess. Anyway, all right. Well, so your dad was asking, I think.
He said if he was standing in the middle of Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
And go ahead, Deb. Just repeat it to me, and I'll.
All right, Stan. Can you hear me, Stan?
Yes, I can now.
Okay. And again, I apologize in advance for however idiotic these questions might sound, but I'm trying to work this through in my head. We've got this somewhat arbitrary window between 5 and 11 p.m. Eastern Time, and we'll just say that an event, this shot across the bow that you referenced, takes place. And here I am. I'm standing, just getting a pizza from a fantastic pizza shop out of Brooklyn, walking to my car, and bang, this event does happen. Now, what am I gonna see, if anything, or am I going to be turned into a charcoal briquette in the middle of the street, or what's gonna? Yeah, I mean, walk me through what would happen.
You may have several minutes to maybe even quarter or half an hour before the intensity of the storm hits. There'll be a leading edge of it, and it will come in. You will certainly see an increase in light. I suspect more towards the bright blue side temporarily. And it will get very warm. Hopefully, if it were going to get extremely warm, it would happen in a few seconds, so you'd be like standing in Hiroshima or something. You'd never know what hit you. But I don't think that's what we're going to see. I think it'll be a more drawn-out process where you will have time to dive for cover under buildings or basements and things like that, or in caves. But I'm not saying this will happen in the next 2 weeks. But seeing the activity of the sun at the moment for the next 2 weeks of the forecast of it being so threatening, this could cause, as a minor event, it could cause EMP type effects in our power grid if it hits us, if we're the side that's exposed at that time. And I think that's highly probable. That can cause fires. It can cause transformers to fail, high voltage lines to arc over and create fires in the surrounding territory, flammable material. Not to mention breaking down our communications all across the planet with the United States and other satellite things as well, which would be directly affected by the solar burst of that nature, perhaps even bringing a lot of them down from orbit over a period of weeks. So, I don't know. I certainly, if you see it getting very bright around you and feel the warmth, and I think you would certainly feel that very early in the piece, the sharp prickling needles on your exposed skin, don't look at the sun. Shield your eyes as best you can with your hands or something else, and get to cover, possibly, if possible, below ground in the subway systems or somewhere. Get out of the direct sunlight if that happens. But
would a conventional house basement, people laugh at some bloggers, blogging out of their grandmother's basement. Would a conventional house basement be sufficient cover, or would it have to be something much deeper, much more refined?
All right. To answer that, let me say, when the event occurs, the one that's going to be strong, that can burn a tree, burn it right there where it's exposed. It's not a little bit of a grass fire. It burns the leaves and limbs on a tree. Do you think a wooden house?
Yeah, you don't have
you
to.
Might
I think my dad's thinking he doesn't move too fast, so he needs to know what his options are.
I'm hoping. I'm with you, Doug, but I'm hoping that the rapture will occur near to that time. Or if we're to die in that event, that the Lord is merciful and we get a quick passing and a relatively pain-free and fear-free passing.
Yeah.
Look, why else would the Scriptures say, "Hide me from the wrath of the Almighty"? Rocks fall on top of me and hide me from the wrath of the Almighty. And why would men look for caves and to hide under rocks from the heat? You see what I'm saying? They are looking for real protection. And, the Hopi, talking about, they're out there in the middle of the desert in Arizona and up on the mesas. And they've got a lot of rock and, dried mud dirt over the top of them. And for those that have built the underground igloos, the kivas, they will have a place to run. It won't be the Hilton. It won't be air conditioned, but they'll be out of the direct heat and sunlight, and will probably fare better than most of us that are depending on our homes or our wooden homes over basements. But I've got a wooden home over basement. I've got volatiles stored in my workshop, and that will probably add to the problem because those will all explode and catch fire. Your gasoline for your mower, or for people that got boats or RVs, your cars, they will catch fire, and then of course that'll burn the house down over your head. So we better best be out of here, or the good Lord had perhaps better tell us where to go and help us get there before that event.
Yeah, and I do believe that if we're meant to be here, to be the ones that overcome and endure, that there will definitely be a protection. The Lord said in many places in the Old Testament, hide yourself for a moment until the indignation of the Lord pass over. And there's many other references to it. An escape that is not being taken into heaven but it is being protected supernaturally by the Lord while on earth, while there is a wrath or an indignation poured out upon the earth. But there will be those that are protected.
Look at the angels that the Lord sent to get Lot and his family and take them to safety while fire and brimstone rained down on Sodom and Gomorrah.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's going to be a similar event somehow or another that will happen.
And, this is a good segue, Stan. Did you see the Pope's latest comments about evolution and what he stated about how the Lord God, when he said this, that there was, in creation, God did not have a magic wand. He did not just, run around and create things like a magician with a magic wand, that their Big Bang Theory is scientifically, the Big Bang Theory and the theory of creationism can be tied together, but it wasn't all God's doing, pretty much is what the...
Well, whether it's not all God's doing or not, I'd argue that point. But other than that, I would agree. Take, for example, when Israel was leaving Egypt in the Exodus, there were what you would call, quote-unquote, natural events that saved them from the Egyptians, that parted the Reed Sea, that gave them fresh water out of the saltwater ponds 3 days' march from that point on the other side of the Reed Sea. These things were using the natural elements here on the planet that the good Lord put into operation when he created the planet and when he created the universe. Now, many people still think that, the universe is billions of years old and that kind of stuff. And I disagree with that. I don't think it's 6,000 years old. I think it's older than that, but not billions. And the reason is, when God created the things in the beginning, he created a very dense universe, and the speed of light was like a million times faster than it is now. I'm just using an example. It's called an exponential curve. It was hugely faster than it is now. So if the speed of light was, let's say, for an example, a million times faster than it is now just after the Big Bang, then the radioactive decay rate of particles, of throwing off electromagnetic radiation like light in various frequencies, the rate at which, say, carbon-14 or argon, these things they use to determine the age of things here on the Earth, the rate at which those things would have aged, the half-life, would have been huge, fast. I mean, like in seconds, as opposed to years before the half-life was reached and, then the next half-life. So the way we try to judge the age of the universe by using the radioactive decay method and the speed of light as a constant does not work. The speed of light is not a constant. It varies on the density of space. It travels faster in toward the center of the universe where the galactic Big Bang occurred, and slower on the extremities. And we're on the extremities of one of the galaxies, on one of the arms. Having said that, the Pope's statement about him not waving a magic wand is correct in this respect. God does not violate the rules of physics that he set up in the universe when he created it. He uses them. He plants situations eons, ahead of the actual use of them, so that when he does call them into play, like in the Exodus, they are there and are miraculous, but not because he waved a magic wand. It's because he programmed it from the very creation of all that is. Case in point, in the Exodus crossing, 3 days after they crossed the Reed Sea, they came upon a bunch of bitter water ponds, which we found today. They're there. They're salt water that's formed by the huge winds that blow the Red Sea arm that goes up into the Suez area, up over land, and deposits salt water, which then evaporates and becomes very concentrated brine, very dense brine. When Moses was led to there, God led him to say to the young men of Israel, "Gather me some large pieces of wood, and shape them and throw them into the air over the bitter water pond so that they fall down into the water, and it will turn into fresh, clean drinking water." So they did this, and to their amazement, right where they threw the logs into the water, fresh water started to well up and spread all over the top of the saltwater pond, and fresh water sat on top of the pond, and they had all the water they needed to drink. Now, how did this happen? We used military maps and found that up in the hills miles away in the Sinai Peninsula, where the snows came, the snows would come and melt and go underneath the sand in what's called a wadi, and that fresh filtered snow water would go down right underneath those bitter water ponds and would fill up the saltwater ponds underneath a lid of heavy salt water. It's called a saltwater inversion. And until something comes along and forces some spot on the top of that salt water to sink down into the fresh water, which is lighter than the salt water, until that moment, nothing happens. The fresh water stays underneath. But when the logs fell in, it drove the salt water, the heavy salt water, down underneath the fresh water immediately under there, and it all just started to cascade and fall down. So the heavy salt water fell down, pushed the fresh water up on top of itself, and it was a miracle. Not a wave of a magic wand, but a circumstance put into existence by the good Lord, the Creator, to be used when He wanted to at that particular time. And it's another discussion to see how they crossed the Reed Sea inside of like a hurricane almost. It was a swirling air mass, and they were right in the middle of it, where the warm air came down on top of them and spun around and formed a wall of inertia between them and the Egyptian soldiers. But anyway, that's another discussion. Those things are miraculous to us, and they should be, because they were planned by God before the creation of the world even. But it's not like Him breaking the rules and waving a magic wand. It's Him using what's been put in place by Himself a long time ago.
Yeah, and I understand that, and I think what's lacking and what his message was is the fact that what you said, that yes, the Lord is the creator of all the universe and all. He is the beginning, the author of the beginning from the end. And the Pope seemed to not, he seemed to mock God in the way I read that article, basically stating that God wasn't powerful enough to be able to create the universe and the planets and the situations, like you said, creating a situation, opening a door in my life, 1,000 years before I was born, in some way. He made it sound like he put limits on the Lord's ability and authority over this universe that we live in. And that's what kind of caught me. Me too. And we know that there will be the head of the Catholic Church, the Vatican in these times, whether it be this Pope or one to follow, will lead the flock astray. He will make a deal with the Islamic nations and form a world religion, which this Pope seems to be set on doing. I'd hate to be in his shoes, Absolutely. Moving on here, we got about 15 minutes till the top of the hour. Something we haven't touched on really in a few weeks is the drought in California. I have an article here out of SACBEE.com, SACBEE.com. It's the state of California, Sacramento Bee, I'm sorry. Coastal California residents using far less water. They're talking about residents of coastal communities and other parts of the rural California have been regulated to rationing per capita water for conservation efforts due to drying up reservoirs and the drought, which has been in effect brought about by a state of emergency back in January. And we know the drought has gotten so much worse since in the last year. But they're talking about water rationing throughout the state of California.
Well, one of the things that we've discussed, maybe it was last year, you and I anyway, remember where they were going to restrict the groundwater pumping at some future point. Well, that future point's here, because they're pumping it out faster than it can be replenished in short time. And when they remove the water, it leaves cavities underneath the ground and structurally weakens the ground of California, which can be quite dangerous if there's another shake, or just all by itself it might trigger the shake and make a big quake and fracturing all through there, ending up making California a bunch of little islands. Do you see?
Yeah.
Wow.
Hello. Oh yeah.
Yeah, and they're going to say that the residents in the cities and water, the agencies who control the water, are going to continue with the restrictions, continue with the fines for violators who are using water carelessly, and yet at the same time we saw stories of people who let their water turn or let their grass get a little brown, getting fined for not watering enough. But I hope to see a turnaround here where maybe we get some big snowstorms in the mountains out there that helps ease the burden from this drought, because California is a huge area of agricultural resources, and the continuing ruin being done by this drought is going to be felt sooner than later.
But Joe and Stan, isn't this more of a man-made drought? I mean, a diversion. I mean, what was it, 500 million gallons of water that was diverted for some smelt fish rather than the farmlands that needed it? I don't know how long ago that was, but I mean, isn't this a man-made drought?
Well, I'm certainly human activity has contributed, but rainfall is another issue as well. California uses a lot of the Colorado River for its water source, and we've seen the levels, drop in major lakes along the Colorado River. Really dropped to where the docks were on dry ground for several hundred feet in. That's not man-made use unless you call them using what comes to them from the mountains man-made use. They were using resources and depending heavily on the Colorado River in addition to what rains they did get out of the mountains of California there inland. But no, it's not all just man. It's a seasonal thing, and it's the worst drought they've had there in the last 100 years. And it's been running now, about 3 years. You just can't keep doing that and keep crops running. So, the natural balance of things is going to invert. Humans, what their particular part of it, growing crops has been, will probably stop. And people have to move away or something because there won't be any work there. It's a combination of things. It really is. You can't blame it all on mankind, Doug.
All right. Stan, if I may, I've got a question from a listener. I don't believe you got a copy of this, but Helen M. writes, let's see, your question for Stan about the United States Navy map of future North America. Now she writes this. She writes that John Moore interviewed an individual who served in the Navy yesterday, who witnessed seeing the Navy map in 1979, which shows much of the U.S. coastlines underwater. Now, she writes that he also references the existence of Nibiru, which was discovered by the Pioneer space probe that year, assuming she means 79. The inference is that Nibiru will be the cause of the coming coastal disaster. Now, according to her, she states that John confirmed the validity of the map from his contacts. Now, that's different from the validity of some type of an event. Okay. Now, having said that, she wants to know if you're familiar with this map and the discovery of the Pioneer space probe, and do you have any additional information about the probe's discovery?
No, I don't. I do, somewhere in my database here, I have that map, that naval map he's talking about, and it is a logical extension of what is happening to the continental United States, the lower 48. It's showing that the Gulf of Mexico will connect to the Great Lakes, that the New Madrid, Mississippi fault line up in that New Madrid area there will open up and let the Great Lakes drain directly into the Gulf of Mexico or vice versa. But there will be a waterway separating the east coast of the United States from the Midwest. over on the west coast, you know, the archaeological, geological evidence, in the San Joaquin Valley, California, shows that it wasn't but a few hundred years ago that the sea flowed into that area, and that's why it's such a lush growing ground, is because of the sea floor. You know, the marine animals and their waste products produced a very fertile San Joaquin Valley. But now it's dammed up with about 16 feet of rocks and dirt and stuff there, and that separates the seawall, or the sea, from flowing into the San Joaquin Valley today. But again, using logic, you say if something, an earthquake happened that caused that dam to break, it's only 16 feet high, if that dam wall were to break, then certainly the Pacific would flow into the San Joaquin. And if other earthquake damage caused settling of various suburbs in California right on up into Washington State, that there would be a series of islands that would appear because other parts of the West Coast would be underwater. Now, whether it would go down into the mantle at that point, I don't know, but certainly with the water table being lowered like it is, a good shake would make certain suburbs that are over the top of these water cavities now collapse and fall into, become sinkholes on a massive scale, which would then create the islands around them. I mean, even NASA has warned California that, warned the United States about California that if this drought continues to hit the food supply, which California supplies a huge amount, 40-50% of our food supply in the growing, vegetation stuff, that there would be definite changes to the American lifestyle because of this. We're tied to California. It's not just California's problem, it's our problem. And certainly there are people, Doug, in defense of what you were saying about human activity, there are people there, in Rancho Santa Fe in San Diego County there, where, the ultra-rich live, and they might use 500 or 600 gallons a day per person, which is extraordinary. But that's not enough, just what they're using to cause the drought. I mean, it's just a wasteful use of the water, but it still goes back to almost like God's plan or judgment of the United States. And as I say, it's not just California. It's using California as a thing to kind of reprimand the rest of the United States that let a lot of things happen, politically and philosophically, to turn the United States into what used to be a God-fearing and a Jesus-following nation into, a bunch of heathens. I mean,
that's for sure. Yeah. What can we expect? I mean, what should we expect? And this is more rhetorical than anything else. I mean, when we look at the number of, or look at the blood shed from abortions, and look at the lack of morality, and look at the waywardness, the lawlessness of those in power, and we're just seeing everything fall apart from within, or being torn down from within. So shouldn't we expect judgment to befall us?
Well, I'm hoping that this election will allow us to turn some of these things around, to put God back in the schools, and to allow prayer and not make it, a social, not PC thing to do. I know that at the moment here, I'm just looking on the screen here, it looks like we're going to throw out the Democratic senator here in Colorado. It looks like, Cory Gardner, the Republican, has got it by 50% to 44%, which is a good thing. We need to get the liberal Democrats out of Colorado and get rid of a lot of the dope problems and a lot of the social engineering they're doing, because we have so many Christian world-based ministries here in Colorado Springs and Denver, and it works against us here. And so I'm glad to see that the people are waking up and voting the right way to allow us to return to the faith of Jesus and to do what we're supposed to be doing. So maybe this is a sign that will happen all over the United States. At the moment, at the moment it says the Republicans have overthrown 4 Democratic Senate seats, and they only need 2 more now to run the majority of the Senate, and certainly they'll get the House, I'm sure. And this means that we could see enough pressure brought to bear to start undoing what the current administration nationally has been doing to us along the lines of what we should be doing toward our God and for our God.
Well, I hope that to be the case, Stan, but let me ask you this, and this calls for your speculation, of course, but could you see, based on this turn, this political turn, this mandate, which appears to be more, I would liken it more to an anti-Obama vote or an anti-Obama sentiment than a pro-Republican vote. Maybe I probably slaughtered that.
No, I understand what you're saying, and I do agree. The Republicans, in fact, both parties have people behind the scenes that all answer to the same dark lord, as it were. And the Republican path is perhaps one that has traditionally been conducive to allowing the Christian and Judaic faith to prosper.
Right.
But yes, I know the Democrats won't agree with it, but the results of these elections are an anti-Obama administration knee-jerk, and I hope it continues to be more.
Okay, in a follow-up to that, my view, and I had attempted to talk about this at the beginning of the program, and I mentioned this last night, I do believe that this makes Barry Soetoro, Obama, whatever you want to call him, whatever you want to call him, much more dangerous. He's gone. I don't believe in the lame duck principle when it comes to Obama. He's too much of a narcissist by definition, I believe, and I think that those around him have too much influence, and they've waited too long for this opportunity to institute Marxist policies. Do you feel, and again, this calls for speculation, do you feel that perhaps that Obama could come out swinging from this and saying, okay, well, since it's going to be gridlock, I'm going to unlock this gridlock and institute my policies, regardless of what the houses of Congress decide?
He's already exhibited that. He's already been doing that now. When they have the Senate in their control, he overrides them and the House with executive orders. I'm still wondering whether or not we will have another election for president in 2016, or whether he will be in the middle of a declared national emergency and say the elections are canceled, and in essence he will make himself the new dictator of the United States. As you say, he's a narcissist. He thinks he hung the moon. And, I don't think our electoral process is going to be fair if it is even still intact in 2016.
Wow. Yeah, I'm not too sure that it is now at all. But,
I know.
We have to pray that we can at least continue to worship and to evangelize freely in this nation for as long as we can, and that for when the times come where this will be attacked legally and to the death, that we are protected from it and able to continue and endure, or taken away from it, as you stated earlier, Stan. But in any regard, our faith and our hope needs to be in the Lord and not in any politician, not in any agenda of any politician. And I believe that is the safest bet. I know it is the safest bet for any person who is getting worried or caught up in these current events and things we're seeing happening on the earth. The Lord is the answer. He is our refuge. And without him and our spiritual preparedness and a relationship first, we have nothing else. So that needs to be first and foremost. And as things of the world become less and less stable and look to fall more into chaos rapidly, I think we need to hearken to the Lord more now than ever.
Yeah,
I know. The thing I wanted to also add to this about things falling apart is that the earthquake systems at the moment is part of this judgment we're talking about. And for weeks, months now, we've been talking about Bartabunga, the Iceland volcano, and the quakes around that. And they haven't slowed up, as our listener Kim keeps me apprised of these things. The Azores in the middle of the Atlantic, off the coast of Spain near the rocks of Gibraltar, many earthquakes there. And if you follow that fault line down through the Mediterranean and into the Red Sea, which is part of the Great East African Rift, to our surprise, within 280 miles of the Garden of Eden was a 5.1 Richter, and off to the left of there a bit, another 5-some-odd Richter earthquake in the last week. That is part of an unfinished plate tectonic border that's in Tanzania and Burundi and Uganda, in that area there. It's not widely played up, but it's a fractured plate boundary. They're still hung together there in the Great Depression or rise up, actually, from Ethiopia up through Tanzania. And so I'm wondering if that's going to split apart there and separating, Uganda, Tanzania, and that area from the rest of Africa with a bigger gap than they've got now, with a bigger rift. So things are happening all over the planet in areas that normally are fairly quiet. And keep your eyes on the Canary Islands, because you know that if the earthquakes, which are just a few hundred miles from there, off the coast of Spain and near the Straits of Gibraltar, if those earthquakes progress along that area, it may form along what the Spanish have called the new plate tectonic border running from northwest Africa, from Morocco area straight over to Florida. And that shake could release Cumbre de Vieja and the much talked about tidal wave that would hit the east coast of the United States. We're seeing the earthquakes now. And as I say, they're in unusual places. So, all these things put together show that judgment is coming heavily upon the United States. And I agree, Joe and Doug, that you don't put your faith in a particular politician. They're just humans. But we must try to take directions that are in the right direction, even though, like if.
Yeah, using our means here on Earth as we can, to the best of our ability to restore or bring about as much goodness as we can, and as the evil continues to increase. We need to use the earthly systems in a way where we can do as much good as humanly possible with the systems we have in place.
If you could see that the current political structure, whether it be national or local or whatever, is going in the wrong direction, and you have candidate or candidates stand up and are not moving in that direction so fast, or claim to be going the other direction, which should be a righteous one, if you don't vote, then you're guilty of letting it happen. At least try to vote in a direction that's responsible, which is, why at this point we only have basically a two-party system that's worth voting. But I see voting for the Republicans as a method of slowing down the progress of the evil one. It's not going to cure it, but it just slows it down, whereas with the democratic process, they just run rampant, crazy. I know a number of Democrats that would still vote for Obama until the day they die, and stand for what he stands for, and I just cannot understand it. It's not right. It's just not right.
No. And amen to that. Stan, we've reached the top of the hour. It's been another fast
Dang, it is.
hour. It goes by so fast when you're on with us, and we enjoy and appreciate your time so much. Everything that you and Holly do, the books of great knowledge and intelligence that you guys have compiled and put together over the years, and your website, your speeches, and your time with us, it's we appreciate it very much, and our listeners do too. And that's not just me saying that. That is echoing sentiments from many emails and letters we receive from our listeners that thank us for having you on. So I want to pass that along to you guys.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I'll tell Holly. That's really good to hear.
Please do. Please do. You're
alrighty,
much
folks.
loved.
All right. Well, look, I'll say good night for the show, but I'm going to head upstairs now then and grab a cup of coffee and watch the results.
Sounds good, Stan. Until next week, stay safe, and God bless you guys.
God bless you guys. Take care now.
Have a good night.
Bye.
All right, that was Stan Deyo from StanDeyo.com. He's on with us every Tuesday night. He is our expert when it comes to physics, earth changes, and so much more. Very knowledgeable in Scripture. I'd even call him a prophecy expert. I don't know if he'd call himself that, but I will, as he is on top of so much is going on in the world, whether it is to do with earth changes, natural events, or supernatural events. We always love to hear his opinion. We're going to come back on the other side taking your phone calls. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the third and final hour of this Tuesday edition of the Hagmann Hagmann Report. We're going to be taking your phone calls this hour. Just want to give a quick hello and thank you to Kurt R. for your email, as well as Christina G. I hope the sound situation was fixed on your end, and thank you for sending the emails about listening and you guys appreciating the show. We appreciate you guys for listening. With that, we're going to go to the phone calls. We're going to take your calls at 661-244-9839. Press 1 after that, and it will prompt us that you want to come on air. We're going to start in area code 423. We're going to go 423 first. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hey, guys. What's going on?
How you doing? Is this Tommy?
Yeah. I'm doing all right.
Hi, Tommy.
Good show tonight.
Well, thanks. That's great to hear. What's on your mind?
Oh, I was just wanting to share some scripture with you guys. I don't know if you've ever seen or heard this before, but in 2 Kings 20, verses 8 through 10, where Isaiah goes to Hezekiah, gives him 15 more years, you know the story.
Yes.
When you look at Hezekiah looks for, what will be the sign. Isaiah tells him the sun will go forth 10 degrees. Hezekiah says, well, it does that automatically. What if it went back 10 degrees? I think this is talking about time travel.
How do you get time travel from that?
Yeah, from what I understand, it was a sundial they were referring to at first. Now, where is this? Hezekiah?
Yeah, but the sun goes back. It didn't go forward like it does naturally. It goes back 10 degrees. You're talking like 20 to 40 minutes.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, I see where you're headed with this. Okay, go ahead. Go on.
It was just something interesting I've came across. It's been on my heart for a few days, but I just want to share it with you. I was just listening to the show, but God bless you guys.
Well, thank you. Thank you
God
very
bless
much.
You too, Tommy. And yeah, that's something I'll pull the verse up, and we'll have to talk. I'll talk with my dad off air, and maybe we can, when Pastor Langford comes on Thursday, that's something we can get into him with and see what he has to say about it. Anything else before we...
No, that's it. It's 2 Kings 20, verses 8 through 10. Right in there, it'll tell you where it goes backwards. So it kind of sounds like time travel.
It's interesting you say that, Tommy, because I received, and I want to thank, I want to thank you who sent me this book via the Prophecy Club. I don't have your permission to give your name over the air, but I received a book called Time Travelers of the Bible, How Hebrew Prophets Shattered the Barriers of Time and Space. Now, you're correct. When I say you're correct, there's an indication of time travel, and certainly throughout the Bible there are numerous references to, or at least suggestions of time travel, whether it be Ezekiel or I won't get into that, but very interesting observation.
What was that book called again?
It's called Time Travelers of the Bible, and it's written by Gary Stearman. And it's a fantastic compilation of accounts within the Bible by Gary Stearman. And in fact, there's a foreword in there from Dr. Tom Horn, talking about this, but it's called Time Travelers of the Bible by Gary Stearman. I would recommend, since you brought that up, I'd recommend you grabbing a copy of that.
Do they get into this story?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Do they talk about this specific story?
There are a couple from memory here. It's a book that spans, I think, I don't know, 500 and some pages. I think they're at the periphery. There is some discussion about that or reference to Hezekiah and that what you're referencing.
Okay, well, appreciate it. I'll check it out.
All right, bud.
But
appreciate it.
I was just saying, God bless, and y'all have a good one.
Thanks, buddy. Take care.
You too. Have a good night. All right. We're going to go right along to the next phone call. We're going to go to area code 253. 253, thanks for holding. You're up next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. 253. 253, thanks for holding.
Hey, you guys.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, Jack. Hey. What's going on?
You tell us.
Much. Glad to see we finally got you on air.
Yeah, that was a good show. That was a good show tonight with Stan. He if he caught himself, he's a post-tribber now.
I didn't even catch that. Okay.
Well, because remember when he was talking about the sun, he's explaining the wrath of God, and we know that being post-trib, that the wrath that the tribulation will take place before the wrath of God. Okay.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. I see what you're saying.
And he explained that, but I don't think he even caught it. I did though. I got the Bible out and started. Huh?
Leave it to you, my friend. Leave it to you. Fantastic.
That was good.
I just want to say this. Jack's been doing a lot of research about the Ebola, and if you want to call it that, Ebola, on what's been happening here in America as well as other countries, and how real is this? Is this actually Ebola, or are we seeing some other things? I don't know. I haven't talked to you in a few days, Jack, on how your research is coming, and if you found anything even more interesting than things we've talked about. But is that something you wanted to get into tonight?
Yeah, I'm just I've taken a couple. You know what I've been into for the last couple of days? You're probably gonna laugh at me. Near-death experiences.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's very interesting, and I've heard a lot.
Your
of
own
good
or
ones.
other people?
No, these are other people. I've never had one.
All right.
I'd like to have one. Yeah. But these are really good. But back to the Ebola thing. You know what? I just was, when you made that statement, Doug, that you said that, are we looking at a 9/11 template? I just wanted to reach through the screen and grab the mic and say, hey, Doug, yes, it's a hoax. It's all a hoax. You just gotta investigate this. John Rappaport all over it with no more fake news, and I don't have my notes open right now, but if you go on and see these people in Africa, I mean, they're all in the hot zone, wearing T-shirts, saying that Ebola is real, and there's no hazmat. And look, if this is really what it is, and I did the backtrack on the flight on Duncan, and where does a guy that makes $545 a year come up with $8,500? That's just from, I backtracked it from Dallas to Dulles to Brussels, and from Brussels I'd had to go to Monrovia, Liberia, to a travel agency to get a ticket. But stopping it just from Fort Worth to Dulles to Brussels is $8,500. And the company involved, I believe, is a front company for a 3-letter organization. But that's,
and that company is Sisson.
You got to. Let me get to my notes real quick. I got it earmarked here. If I can get to it real quick.
While you're doing that, I just want to reiterate, you made a great point. A guy making $530 less than $550 a year, being on a plane ride costing almost $10,000. That's
ridiculous.
He's frugal.
Well,
yeah.
There's something that's just not lining up. You know, when I started hearing all these deaths in Africa, something in my spirit said something is really wrong here. Something's wrong. What's going on here? And the more I listen and the more I look and the more I come up with, and here's the name of that company. It's called Silson, SILSON Global Business Liberia Ltd. I personally believe that this is a front company. I'm not kidding you. I think it's a front company for a three-letter organization. And honestly, I think it's DOD.
Really? Well, that would make sense. Yeah, that would make sense. Okay.
You got, all right. And here's another one. They got the military. You think the military's there for the African people? Are you kidding me?
No.
Do you think they really care? Huh? You know why they're there. All the resources, it's all there for plunder and to just rape the country of all of its resources. The gold, the diamond mines. And they're on a diamond mine strike. And the oil reserves that they just found there recently. That's what they're there to protect. DOD's behind this. Yeah. I just know it is. And you guys, go look at No More Fake News and read the reports that John Rappaport has put together. And this is all going to come together for you. If you could ever get him on as a guest, man, you guys could be number one in the ratings for breaking the Ebola hoax. It's a hoax. I'm telling you, it's a hoax.
Well, you know what, Jack? I'm not sure it's a hoax. What I think it is part of a larger plan that does involve the military, hence your findings with DOD. It does involve other three-letter agencies, but it also involves the control of both sides, both the pandemic side as well as the vaccination side, and it does provide the.
I think they're creating that
commercial law. Yeah.
I think they're just it's manufactured by them, and to cause really actually, and I've said this before, the death is in the vaccine. It's in the needle. The people that are dying from this are getting the vaccines. What's in the vaccine? That's where if you want the truth, the real truth, you need to get a vial of that vaccine and get it to an independent lab and have it analyzed. I'll bet you know what you're going to find in it? Formaldehyde. They've been caught dumping formaldehyde in the water wells in many of these countries, and they've been caught at it, and people have died from it with the same symptoms as Ebola.
Yeah, they've been caught dumping formaldehyde in the water in West Africa, in different places, and yes, this is genocide, and certainly this is not your normal hemorrhagic filovirus that the 1976 Marburg version. This is something totally different. And I think Steve Quayle does a remarkable job in keeping track on his website, stevequayle.com, in the Ebola section of what's really taking place. So, Jack, you're not far off, buddy. Yeah, you're really not.
Oh, well.
All right, brother.
I just wanted to get that out, and so people could, maybe write this down and do some more checking too, and I just took a break here for a couple of days on it because I woke up my friend in South Bend, Indiana. He goes by CM. He lives in South Bend. A good friend of mine. And I broke it to him. He said, Jack, and then he got busy looking at stuff, and he started leading me down other trails. I said, wow. So
fantastic,
that's how I came.
Brother.
It's just I'm not. I just don't see a pandemic. I just don't see that happening. I think that this can be stopped if somebody would truly get into investigating this and what's the root cause of this and and who's all behind this. And I think it all leads to...
We've got a trail of dead microbiologists, dead scientists behind us. We also have the dead aboard MH17, I believe it is, or the one that was shot down over Ukraine.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to this that is not being covered. Jack, we appreciate your call, my friend. We really do.
Well, yeah. I thanks for letting me share that.
Yeah. Well,
absolutely, Jack.
You guys have a good evening, and thanks for letting me on, and God bless you. I love you.
Love you too, Jack. We'll talk soon. Have a great night.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.
Take it easy. All right. We're going next to area code 406. 406, you're up live on the Hagmann Hagmann Report. I believe this is Montana.
How are you doing? Is this Doug and Joe?
Yes, this is.
Hey, I just appreciate you guys a lot, and I just wanted to comment. I see a lot of changes taking place in your lives, and over the months, you guys are growing in the Lord. It's been a wonderful thing to see. I wanted to make a comment about what you guys were talking about last night about the Bible translations. You're right on track with what Doug was sharing. That really is a major issue that's going on. I noticed, I've done some study on it too, and you can get a real expose by listening to Gail Rippling or do a 2.5 hour expose on Bible translations. And she was a professor at one of the universities and studied it out and came to the same conclusions that Doug was sharing last night. And there's another brother that's probably the top expert in the world on it, is Les Garrett from Australia. And just a couple of comments. Like, for instance, the NIV Bible, there's 2 homosexuals on the translation board of the NIV Bible. I think if you look it up, you can ask on your computer how many words in an NIV Bible, how many in the King James. I think there's 96,000 less words in an NIV Bible than a King James Bible. The man that used to own the copyright on it was Rupert Murdoch, and I think you guys know who he was.
Yeah, through Zonderberg Publishing, I believe.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but at least at one point he was the one that owned the copyright on it. But the bottom line is that when you get a copyright on something called the Holy Scripture, some terrible corruption has taken place, because you're basically saying, I wrote this is my production. And when you look at the word, and it says, if any man add to the words of the prophecy of this book, God will add to him the plagues written therein. And if any man take away from the words of the prophecy of this book, God will take away his part out of the book of life and of the holy city. I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole. But I think you'd be real edified to look up Gail Ripplinger and Les Garrett, because these people are masters on the subject. And if you ever want to hear a word that'll burn your heart, there's a brother from South Africa named Keith Daniels. And on sermonindex.net, you can listen to him preach on where we got the Word of God. And he's a man that's so passionate for the Word of God. It's just, man, fire in his words. But you guys are dead on. It's the word is, the devil's come after the Word of God. And if he can get the people to have a word that's has pablum instead of the true Word of God, the old men of God of history, the Charles Finney and the John Wesley and George Whitefield and Spurgeon and all these men used the King James Bible to bring the glory of God into the lives of people. And they're not going to do it with an NIV, I can tell you that.
Absolutely, caller. You're exactly right.
It's amazing, the New King James Version of the Bible, the number of times the word Lord has been omitted, heaven has been omitted, hell changed to Hades, different meanings altogether, and of course close to 100,000 words, I believe, were excised out of the New King James Version of the Bible, and of course the imprint of the triqueta in the inside cover, and all of the meanings with that. And so some people say, well, this doesn't make a difference. Well, it does. When you change the Word of God, it does make a huge difference. And this is something I haven't spoken to Pastor David Langford about, but certainly will do so, just to get his take on it and to share my findings. And my findings were independent of those who you've mentioned. That would have been helpful to have that earlier, but and it's amazing because I was looking at something totally different. But fantastic! Thank you so much for this information.
Yeah. And these people both go into great detail about each one of the translations and what they've taken out. And the bottom line is on all of it is that people say this is from the Greek text, but there's two Greek texts. And the revised Greek text, which was by these two men named Westcott and Horst, who were in Spurgeon's time, and he wrote out that they were blasphemers. He spoke against them. And these men were actually spiritualists. They were friends of Darwin, and they didn't believe in a literal heaven or a literal hell. And they're the ones that made the revised Greek text, off of which all of the new translations come, except for the Geneva Bible, the Tyndale Bible, and the King James.
Interesting. All right, brother. Well, thank you very much. I just want to say God bless. Thanks for listening, and thanks for your kind words. Appreciate it.
God bless you. Appreciate you guys.
All right, brother. Man, interesting. Yeah, folks, if you didn't catch that last night, the last 30 minutes or so, talking about the New King James Version, the translation, the initiative that was began in, I think, 1975, and it took 7 years to complete. So very interesting.
All right, let's go to area code 717. I believe this is in Pennsylvania. 717, you're live on the Hagmann Hagmann Report.
Good evening, Doug and Joe. How are you both?
Very well.
I wanted to call in tonight. I've heard a couple of people over the past couple of weeks since I last called in, and then again it happened this evening, I think, with the two callers before me, talking about how this Ebola is a hoax. I think that that's really dangerous thinking. What the source of this disease is, I'm not willing to say. We can theorize based on what we've seen written over the past 2 decades in technical papers and what people have made comments to in conferences about disease and population control, that sort of thing. But nevertheless, this is a real virus.
Oh yeah.
This is something that's real. It's not a hoax. I think what the person that I just recently listened to, his name is Ulsterholm. He's the head of CIDREP. Are you familiar with them?
Yes.
Okay. He talked about a paper that's going to be coming out. The research was done in September with macaque monkeys up in Canada, and talked about how the researcher, who was a friend of his and gave him permission to talk about this, both at Johns Hopkins at a recent Ebola conference there, and then also on C-SPAN, was that this disease that they're seeing, and they used virus samples that they got out of Guinea, is different from what they've seen before because of the respiratory component involved. So something's happened with the virus, whether it's a natural or man-made mutation. Something's happened with Ebola Zaire. I think that there's a lot of people who are still trying to figure it out. But this is definitely not a hoax, and it is real.
Let me just, if I can just interject this, when people are saying it's a hoax, I perhaps there's some liberties being used with the semantics. It is
saying it's not the literal Ebola illness that is what they're saying it is, and Steve even talks about this, how the when you're dealing with somebody who has actual Ebola, how blood comes out of all the orifices, and there's a certain manner of death that comes with the actual Ebola strand, that there are other strands or other parts or of this disease that are not bringing about those same kind of deaths that the actual Ebola would.
Well, I'm not a virologist. I work in the medical field, but I do know that there are naturally occurring mutations, and as the disease progresses, as the virus progresses and changes its presentation. Ulsterholm said the scary thing, okay, so I do Ebola screenings at my work, where I work. When patients come into our facilities, we screen them every day now. What I found interesting in Ulsterholm's comments was that out of the research that's coming out of Africa, they now have patients that present from time of initial illness till time of death where they never have a fever. Now, keep in mind that Ebola Zaire falls into that group of viruses, the filoviruses that they call hemorrhagic fevers. And now they have a whole subset of people that are dying that have tested positive for Ebola Zaire, that although it's not a majority, it's still a subset. So the disease is learning, it's changing. And that's what really scares me about it, to be quite honest. And maybe
from
people
the natural
need to...
mutation. Well, I don't mean to talk over you, but I think there are a couple of different things happening. Number one, let's just go back to the basics. What the Center for Disease Control has said, along with the federal government, various agencies and officials, is a bunch of just crap, okay, as far as I'm concerned. They either are totally incompetent or stating something that is absolutely knowingly incorrect, and I believe it to be the latter, not the former. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
All right.
As seeing the things change over the past couple of weeks, the information we've come down, looking at the most recent PowerPoint that came out of Emory University on the lessons learned, I mean, they've had to admit it because people raised the BS flag. Okay, the medical community raised the BS flag, and that's why they changed the PPE guidance that they gave to everybody, where they said, an N95 with a face shield and a hood's fine. No, now they've gone to PAPRs. You have to wear a PAPR when you're dealing with these patients. So,
but if you're talking about the Ebola Zaire or any hemorrhagic filovirus, there's no way in hell. I mean, no way that short of a Bio 4 or level 4 biohazard suit would you be messing around with people that are infected, and certainly you wouldn't have. Yeah. So
it's crazy, and that's why. When you brought up the issue about the CDC, I, for whatever reason, again, whether it's nefarious or it was just, neglect on their part, negligence on their part, I have mixed feelings about, about that, but right now they're incompetent. I mean, I don't trust the CDC. I trust my military training over the CDC. I trust the 2011 edition of USAMRIID's Biochem Warfare book more than I trust the CDC.
Right. I get that. I get that. However, and this is where I'm very strong about this. What we're seeing here, and especially when you toss in Obama pulling in people from, first of all, sending our military out to West Africa, and second of all, bringing in people into the United States. There's something horrifically and diabolically wrong with this picture. You can't tell me that the agenda here, and I'm not yelling at you, or yelling at all, but you can't tell me the agenda is one of this flowery, let us help you contain this virus. That is the height of irresponsibility.
No, there's a couple agendas going on here, Doug and Joe. First of all, there's, I think, the agenda of, I'll be quite honest, trying to get the disease back in the country. Like I've said before, is all you have to do is take a look at history, and what's the best way to bring something back into the country is to use the military coming home from a war and bringing disease and pestilence back with them. The other thing, too, is that, yeah, like the 1918 flu. The other thing is that I find, you go back to the PNAC documents, and this whole empire of what we call America nowadays. I don't know if you've been following the news, but the Chinese are deploying the People's Liberation Army to Sierra Leone and Liberia now. Did you know that?
Yes.
So I think that there's multiple reasons as to why you're seeing this. I think that there's, number one, the issue of, let's bring the disease back, Cloward and Piven, crash the healthcare system, crash the economy, that sort of thing. But then also there's the, trying to impress the Wolfowitz doctrine, not only like they had in Eastern Europe with Ukraine, but let's take the Wolfowitz doctrine to Africa to try to offset the Chinese. Yeah, there's
different context than I was considering, but okay, yep, okay.
There's a web of it, from if you take a look at this from a systems approach, this thing has a web of causation. At the center, you have what's going on in Africa, and there's a lot of feeders going out from it that all play into it. I think it's more than just one issue. I think that there's a lot of dynamics involved, and the way our country is responding to it. And, I even stretch it to going to the point where you take a look at Putin's last comments about a week ago at that conference, really putting to the United States and calling the United States on the carpet with relationship to its global designs. And I think this Ebola thing and our response with the military and what they'd like to see done in this country all play into that.
Exactly. You're 100% right. Let me throw in one more thing to perhaps even complicate the matter further. I don't know whether you saw this or not. Most Americans, most listeners are familiar with the American Stonehenge, the Georgia Guidestones, for example. Mysteriously, a cube was placed in the Georgia Guidestones at some point and recently removed. Now, the filming of the placement was nothing was filmed, but the removal was. And this cube, figure a like a shape like a dice, was removed, but while it was in place at the Georgia Guidestones, two sides were showing. The one side was 20, the number 20, the other side was 14. Well, they made a big production, big showing when they removed this cube from the Georgia Guidestones. Whoever did this, the groundskeeper removed it, and it was filmed being destroyed, being chopped. And it's interesting because the people who saw this got to see the other sides of this cube, and the two I'll talk about just now for the purpose of brevity. One had the number 10 and the other had the number 3. The number 3, considering that the Guidestones are an American Stonehenge, and the way we write the dates out, let's assume 2014 is the year. 310 would be the date, not 10-3, as it would be in Europe. You've got the traditional way we write the dates here in America as
right.
the month, the day, and the year. Okay, so 310. So if you look at what happened on March 10th of 2014, it's interesting to find that on that particular date, the World Health Organization had declared Ebola a threat to the Western world, basically. And I'm paraphrasing here, of course, for the sake of time, but. So could this very well be an Illuminati type of maneuver to alert, to warn, to prepare, or to, inform, the Westerners, America in particular, hey, guess what? Look what happened on March 10th. The World Health Organization comes out and declares Ebola a threat or a potential threat to the United States. So.
Well,
I thought that was interesting.
It's definitely a threat to the United States, and you know as well as I do that once today is over, the gates of hell with this administration is unleashed, and is all you need is amnesty, and that southern border is going to be a mess, and God only knows what's going to come up through that southern border.
Well, look at what's already come up. We've got the Entero D68 virus that previously known as the Honduran virus. They changed that, of course, to be more PC. That's spread all throughout the United States now. We have all kinds of yuckiness coming through the southern border, and it's only going to get worse. And you're right, the gates of hell have been opened or will be opened tonight. I guarantee it. And that's why I was talking about the multidimensionality at the beginning of the show.
Yeah, one last thing I want to leave you with. You saw the Breitbart article this week related to, I assume, the VA down there in Puerto Rico?
There were a couple. I'm not sure which one you're talking about.
Well, Breitbart put an article. It was on All News Pipeline and then before it's news, but then it finally made it to Breitbart. They confirmed it with public relations people with the VA down at San Juan, Puerto Rico VA, that they are putting in the negative pressure and HEPA for that possible Ebola ward at the VA hospital in Puerto Rico.
Oh, yeah.
Keep in mind, Puerto Rico is a territory. When they fly back and forth from the United States to Puerto Rico, guess what? Those aren't internationals. Those aren't international flights. So they're not going to go through the same kind of screening that you do on the international flights. So if they bring military into San Juan, Puerto Rico, put them in that VA hospital there, and then people get the disease down there, they're not going to go through the same filtering process that they are coming into the States. That's another way for it to come here.
Sure. Okay. Very good catch on that. Yeah. Very good. Okay. Well, we're
Take care. You have a good night.
Yeah. Thanks, brother. And folks, I
think
what we're
Dublin.
looking at here. What's that?
I said, see you in Dublin.
Looking forward to it, my friend. Yeah, folks, what we have here is a much bigger agenda at play, much bigger objective, and really, I think the main focus of this is to destroy and absolutely destroy the economy. That's the primary purpose, and of course, you've got the international barter trade that's going to be affected, and of course, the medical martial law to speak to a point here. That's all part of this, and of course the vaccination side, which will lead to the depopulation progress. So, John.
All right. Thank you, caller. You have a great night. Thanks for calling in. We have just a few minutes left of the show. Just a quick headline I guess I'll get into here on the elections, as much as it pains me to even talk about this. GOP 1 seat away from a Senate majority win. And as I just stated in the chat room, these elections are pretty much like deciding who is going to man the underwater Titanic into the bottom of the ocean. I don't know. We have to pray for the best, pray for what is good and who is good to step up and be bolder in these times. But just like I stated earlier, we can't put faith in man, especially politicians. These people have more than not, much more than not, 99.9% to 0.001% have said one thing, that they're going to do one thing. This is the way that they believe. This is their agenda, and get into office and are compromised and do the complete opposite. With a Republican majority Senate as well as the House, it does give Obama that ability to go above and beyond with the executive orders. And even with a Democratic-controlled Senate and a Republican-controlled House, the way it has been for the last 6 years or 4 years, it's the same difference.
Yes.
The agenda will be finished out. It's already planned. It's already written. The executive orders have already been drafted. They're already in succession with dates on them, when they'll be released, how they'll be released, when they'll be signed, how they'll be signed, and what will be a part of them. So we are just witnessing finished history. We are living through it in real time, but it is already won. The battle's already been won. But the Lord's not going to come and fight our individual battle that we have to endure on this earth with Satan. He says in the scriptures, if you rebuke the devil, rebuke evil, the devil will flee you. We need to fight our own spiritual battles here on earth and worry about what is coming from the Lord and his judgments, and making sure we are right according to his ways, not according to political correctness or any other type of doctrine, whether it's appearing to be of God or of biblical nature, unless it is the only one true sound doctrine, Word of God. We need to move away from it and move closer to that Word of God in these last times we're in. Because either way, as I said, whether Democrats, Republicans, the Tea Party, or Communists gain control of the House and the Senate, the outcome is going to be the same. It's just a matter, the only thing I can understand is if the timing will be different as to what happens and when it happens. But pray for this country. Pray for the leaders of this country, whether you don't like them personally or not. We're commanded to not only pray for our friends, but to pray for our enemies as well, as it is important, because it is not only for their spiritual increase if they are somebody who is able to be saved, but the forgiveness is also a huge part of our spiritual growth, and we need to understand that. So we need to pray for our leaders. We need to forgive the people that we despise, because our reward is much greater in heaven. And with that, I don't really have anything else to say.
Very well said, Joe. Absolutely, that's very well said. And please note, as we had said before, it's going to be an entirely different, really a different tack of this renegade in chief beginning tomorrow. Actually, beginning tonight, but beginning tomorrow. Watch for this viciousness to open up, to take place. This overt. No, it'll be more overt.
It's going to be Bush's fault all over again for the next 2 years.
Well, Bush does have blood on his hands, as do his previous administrations. So you're exactly right. But it's going to be interesting, and people enjoy it now. Enjoy your under $3 a gallon gas right now, and
watch for my crazy. What would you call it? Prediction. Watch for Nancy Pelosi to spontaneously melt as water is thrown on her after her true colors are shown in the. I'm just kidding. No, but seriously, even the people who are elected today, none of them are re-implemented or instituted until January. Things are going to stay the same for a little bit as far as that's concerned. And go ahead and finish your thought.
No, I'm very. I just want to say thank you all for listening tonight. Thank you so much for being part of our extended family. Thank you so much for your emails. If I haven't responded to you, I will. I'm a little bit behind on them, and I just want to say God bless each and every one of you. And, we're all in this together. We are family. And I'll tell you something. You folks mean more to us than you will ever know. Every letter, every card, every word of support has really has really uplifted us, and we thank you for that. Don't forget, this Thursday, 2 days from now, Pastor David Langford with Steve Quayle. And you can check our website tomorrow for the write-up on that. And, of course, Dublin, Ohio, Columbus suburb on the 14th and 15th. We hope we can see you there, folks. We're just looking so forward to that.
I know we only have a couple seconds left, but I don't put much stock into the 10-day forecast. But if going by the 10-day forecast, they're accurate, we're going to be looking at some travel through the snow and cold, high in the 30, low of 29 or 18 with snow. Is what I just looked at for the 13th. So
get the dog sled out. Here we come. Whatever it takes to get there, we will on horseback, burros, or dog sleds. That'll do it for us tonight. God bless. Thank you so much for listening. And until tomorrow, stay safe. Take care. God bless.